Chapter 1151. The Art of Mana. Welcome back, my love. Did you ladies have a good trip? Carl greeted Dana as she walked up the stairs. We did. The wedding is set for 1 month from today, well, 29 days. I see that you were busy while we were gone. You found all sorts of new members and employees.
Dana replied.
Carl held his arms open wide, encouraging Dana to sit on his lap while they talked. I did. The employees are formerly from a village in Drod that was having issues with their neighbors. They're taking care of the magical plants in the tiny world. The extra guild members are all sculptors, tailors, and blacksmiths. Most of the tailors didn't become guild members. They're employees, but we did add one to the guild roster, just for the chance to learn more from Ray. I will have to get her to go see them now that you're all back. Are you happy with how all the plans went? Still need to change anything? Carl asked as Dana settled down on his lap and leaned against his chest. No, we covered everything to perfection. I know that you weren't there for it, but we had Ray, Remy, and Kara, so it still felt like we were getting your input. They know you pretty well. Carl laughed at her response. Not only did they know him well, they could check his thoughts to see if he objected to random ideas. Despite the distance, they weren't cut off from their link. You all returned just in time. The winter social is in a few days, and the Guild Alliance is eager to get to show off. I've made you ladies some new decorative accessories using the materials from the monthly delivery of goods that the last Challengers Guild dropped off. They came out very well, and the master sculptors put in some overtime so that they would be ready when you all returned.
Carl explained.
He smiled when Dana squirmed in his lap, turning to face him properly. You didn't do anything crazy, did you? She demanded. Of course not. I only created a new set of accessories. Totem rank, epic grade. They're impressive, but I have made dozens more necklaces at that quality since you've been gone. Most of the Mythic team will be wearing them to the social to show off the fact that the Alliance has mastercrafters. But I'm told that it is as much a fashion show as it is a social event. So Ray is going to love it.
Dana smiled.
It had been a good month to be Ray. Is there anything in particular that you would like for me to make you? I know that Ray has plans for all of the major events, but not every event needs to be perfectly designed to Ray's taste. Carl suggested. Dana winked, then kissed his chin and whispered in his ear. The events I'm thinking of don't need clothing. I've missed you.
Carl disagreed.
Unwrapping his Dana was half the fun. He wrapped an arm under her thighs and stood up, then opened a portal to their bedroom. Ladies, we will see you all tomorrow. Lotus, the tiny world's entrance, is open in the Gargoyle Garden, not far from the portal to Drod. If you want to meet the rest of the employees, that is. Dana laughed as Carl's hand began working the buttons on her top before they were even through the portal, and then she sighed in relief as they were finally alone again. Soft silk slid down her arms, then vanished into her inventory as Carl removed it from her body. She had always been weak to his touch, but today the effect was on an entirely new level. Every touch sent shivers through her body, and the moment that his tongue caressed her skin, making gentle swirls as Carl kissed his way from her neck downward, her mind went completely blank. Dana mewled in pleasure as Carl showed her just how much he had missed her presence, but her mind betrayed her before she could tell him the same. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, the pleasure washed over her, and her consciousness faded. The next thing she knew, she was under the covers, draped across Carl, and the sunlight was streaming in their window, meaning that he had brought her to the Drod Guild house, not to their room in the Alliance house. What exactly was that last night? She muttered to herself, blinking the sleep out of her eyes. Carl rumbled in amusement beneath her. Well, if you don't know, then I've been doing my job all wrong. Dana swatted his chest. Not that, you big idiot. It was like my whole body was electrified, and my mind went blank. Then I just passed out. I've never felt anything like it before. Carl paused, carefully reviewing everything that had happened the evening before. He had been meditating to improve his understanding of the fundamental rule of mana manipulation when the ladies returned, so maybe that had something to do with it? A moment of focus brought him back to that post-meditative state, with energy flowing through him, but Dana had no response. However, when he ran his hand across her belly, She moaned in pleasure, and Carl felt the energy in her body shift. That was it. He was unconsciously altering the mana in her body to follow his will, but the effect was stronger than she could handle. So, if he was going to continue using the trick, he would have to practice. Does this count as learning a new technique? Opal asked from her space. That depends on whether he can turn it into a named skill, or if he just turns Dana into a puddle while trying. Remy replied. Carl tuned the pair out. If they wanted to be nosy, he would just ignore them. Besides, turning this into a skill just might make him the most popular man on the planet if he taught it to others. Chapter 1152. Missed you. By lunch, Dana was pleading for mercy and beginning to lose control of her beast form transformation. The instincts that had been imparted to her from the Stonefur divine fox magic used in her advancement demanded that she transform and dig her claws into Carl to make sure he didn't escape. But her human mind knew that he wasn't planning to go anywhere. Not when he was having so much fun tormenting her in all the best ways. Stop. Let me rest and eat. Your dedication to training is commendable, but we're not all superhumans. Dana complained, then nipped at Carl's chest before transforming back into human form. Fine, but I'm warning you, I will perfect that technique before our wedding night. Carl carried her to the shower, then realized that her legs would not support her, so they were going to have to shower in this position. Then he would carry her down to breakfast. You know that the bride needs to survive until the wedding, right? She looks exhausted, and she's only been back for half a day. Tessa joked when Carl carried Dana down to lunch. I will work on that. Training mana control got a bit out of hand. Carl agreed. Tessa smirked, then gestured for the kitchen staff to bring out the food. Well, you're right on time for breakfast anyhow. The bread just cooled enough to cut. Ophelia made a vague gesture. There is a lot of new equipment in the guild storage. What's that all about? Like a lot of new equipment.
Karl chuckled.
Check out the workshop in Drod. I did some renovations and we got just a few new workers. Sculptors, blacksmiths, and tailors to go with our runecrafters. So we've got more people working? Now that makes sense. At least there is a chance that the gear orders will get fulfilled. I see that Sapphire has been busy as well. She has made quite the variety of accessories, all with slightly different enhancements. But I do notice that they're all blue. She's only upgrading blue items. Ophelia laughed. Carl checked the inventory and chuckled. Indeed, some robes and armor, mostly accessories. Fortunately, we have lightning, water, and fire gems in blue for her to work with. It shouldn't limit her range of enchantments too much if she wants everyone to know that a blue dragon made them. Carl also noticed that all the items were totem ranked, despite the dragon being at the mythical rank. She was actually focusing on what they were intending to sell, and not just testing the limits of her skill. She might have kept a few other pieces for herself, but what was in the inventory was all appropriate for sale. I should put these up in the Guild Alliance listings, so that members know that we've got them for sale.
Karl sighed.
Dana turned on his leg to look up at him. I think it's time that I got a trade skill as well. All the new hires are becoming experts, but the core group has still been holding out, and I'm not sure that there is a good reason for that. Wait, we have an idea. One of the Lala bunnies shouted from the back door of the house. What's up? Dana asked, patting the girl's head as she ran up. I have a cooking trade skill book. You can do the twirl whoosh mish-mash thing and make a new skill, right? Ultra mega super cooking, she exclaimed. Give me that book, Hawk demanded. You want to cook? Carl asked, shocked. It is the art of using fire to turn mice into better mice. Hawk replied in a sage voice. He had a good point, but what he actually wanted to master was the art of barbecue, not the entire discipline of cooking. If I use the book, it's gone, but I can teach others. So let me pay you. How much do you want? Carl asked. The bunny smirked. For advancement potions. Just enough that the bunnies get ahead of the boys by a rank? Carl confirmed, and she bobbed her head happily. Well, I guess it would encourage them to work hard to catch up to their bunnies. All right. I will give you 4 advancement potions as soon as Remy can make them. The cooking skill book vanished, and Tessa gave Carl a confused look. Who wanted to be a cook?
Kara?
I can't see it being Thor or Opal. Maybe Hawk.
Karl smilet.
Yes, Hawk. Cooking is a fire-related skill after all. But now that Hawk had cooking, Carl saw what Lala was talking about. If he combined runecrafting with cooking, he got mystic cooking. Did anyone want to be a special sort of cook? Unfortunately for the Lala bunnies, they've already got a trade skill, so it can't be them. Perhaps our new chef. The obsession demon gave a fist pump in celebration. She was obviously not going to say no to an advanced version of her obsession. Carl held out a hand, and she came over to put her head under it, while Carl activated the Follow Me Little One. Champion Carl offers knowledge, skill, mystic cooking. Will be transferred to the culinary connoisseur Callisto. Yes! First person with the new cooking skill. She cheered. Then she held out her hand, and a new cookbook appeared in it. All right, ladies, let's start getting prepped for dinner. I have new recipes to work with, Callisto announced. Dana laughed as the cook ran back to the pantry and started grabbing stuff out. Hey, I want to cook too, Lotus complained. You're sure? No changing after you pick. Carl reminded her. Me? Change from a specialty in making pastries and sweet things? Lotus asked in a sarcastic tone. You're right. That answer should have been obvious. Champion Carl offers knowledge, skill, mystic cooking. Will be transferred to the healing tree Lotus. Yes. Oh, so many ideas. You can add short-term buffs to food. I can have healing buff pie. Lotus cheered, then ran to join Callisto in the pantry. They were going to be eating well this week. He should teach this skill to the Abbeys in Drod as well. Chapter 1153, Ophelia Likes Leather. Dana shook her head in dismay at Lotus' excitement. The Alliance members weren't going to know what hit them when they came to ask for healers for the Overlord-ranked dungeons. If they thought that Ray making them change clothes was extreme, just wait until they had to test Lotus' new baking experiments. Though, that was probably still less extreme than letting Remy test experiments on them. At least Lotus was going to be making things intended to be edible. I will take the Runemaster skill. That way we can work together.
Dana insisted.
Carl nodded and granted her 2 skills, Runemaster and Skill Book. Both of those skills were going to be useful to her in the near future because they were planning to sell skills to help others advance. Plus, she had skills that Ray wanted, and those would have to be taught by book. Some of the skills Ray was going to be incompatible with, but she had high hopes for Greater Golem, and a few of Dana's new sword skills. Golem duplication was a wonderful skill. Carl quickly double-checked that he had given the skill back to Dana, and made a new mental note to give her the extra copy of the book. Though now she could make a copy for herself. Anyone else want a trade skill? We can probably... Naksha shook her head, as did Tessa. But Ophelia looked like she had a plan. I think I want to try tailoring. Well, leatherworking. There aren't nearly enough female berserker clothing options on this continent. If we increase the fashionability, we could get more berserkers. She decided. Carl chuckled. Well, it's easy enough to create berserkers from warriors with a skill transfer. We might even be able to make more bear totem berserkers if we do it right. If we teach them beast form and then berserk terror, they should get an animal totem berserker that matches their beast form. Ophelia chuckled. That sounds like a lot of fun. Making all the warriors holy sorts is just too boring, and it will lead to another version of the same issue, where everyone has the same skills. Just slightly better skills. But if you make some of them berserkers or rangers, it should cut down on the issues a little. Champion Carl offers knowledge, skill, runic leatherworking, will be transferred to the cuddle bear Ophelia. Ophelia smiled as she accepted the skill. It wasn't master tailoring like Ray had learned, and she could put her own runes on things, but she would be more limited in the items that she could put bonuses on. That still wasn't bad. She wanted to make more items for berserkers, and there was nothing more berserker than leather pants and furs. Heavy armor was a good defensive measure, but it really cramped your style. Ray smiled at Ophelia. There were spider tailors in Drod now, and an Ophelia in Xylaz. She could go back and forth, working with both to turn out a wonderful new line of clothing for the guild. Well, now we've got new skills, but the same issue. We need to get everyone ready for the winter social event. It's a huge party, and the Alliance will be using it to show off. Carl reminded them. Ophelia nodded. Plus, we get to show off. Forget that we're making all the accessories. The world should know that the Darklight host really is an enviable guild to be in. Matilda will send her vampire to join us for the party. She's busy doing things, but Tiffany isn't. Kara added. Just remind her that we will be decorating her vampire to match. I know that the old dragon likes to tease her. Carl informed her. Got it. It shouldn't be a problem. Ray already had most of the outfits that she wanted everyone to wear to the festival prepared. They just needed accessories. But the winter social wasn't just one night, it was 3 whole days of an extended weekend, and they would need different outfits for all of them. At least Ray assumed that they would. The Alliance wasn't putting on an official party of their own, like so many others did, but there was the big party in the middle of town, and then she was sure that someone would invite them to events on the other 2 nights. The first one was the most important, as the Alliances introduced their top members and there was a judged fashion contest. The rest were all networking. While that wasn't the most important aspect to the Darklight host, it would increase the Alliance's popularity and set them up for fewer challengers when the next round of dungeon control contests came. We're not going in Darklight host guild colors theme, are we? Ophelia asked. Ray shook her head. No, that wouldn't work with everyone's complexion. It works well on the vampires because they're already so pale. But a black and white outfit with brown fur? I can do so much better. Carl smiled as the two began discussing Berserker and Werbear fashion, then bounced Dana on his knee. Should we get to work as well? Ray has given me a list of fashionable accessories needed for the totems and myths, but there are plenty of accessories waiting to be made from Overlord-ranked materials as well. If you want to make a statement with your skills, now is the perfect time to start. He suggested. Oh, that is a wonderful idea. How about doing necklaces and amulets first? They're the most visible, and having a big bonus on them would be the first thing that others notice. You can take care of the big names. I will do a bunch for the overlords in the Alliance who are already waiting. Dana suggested.
Carl smilet.
Sapphire was already doing most of the ones for the totem-ranked members, but the accessories fit for the myths would all be the totem rank, totem grade items, and those took far longer than average to make. There are pre-made gems from the other runecrafters that you can set into accessories. Making skill gems is taxing, but Sapphire has decided that it's the best way forward for most of the others, as the gem decides the peak quality that the skill can be used at, as long as they don't energize it when they finish. You just insert the pre-made gem into the item, then complete the whole thing as one item.
Carl explained.
With thousands of tiny characters put on every gem, it was possibly the best handwriting training that any of them could get. And with the elemental creation abilities of their sculptors, there was no longer a shortage of Overlord rank and lower elemental gems. Chapter 1154. The Dana Crafter? Carl and Dana were seated at a crafting table that afternoon, while Dana went through the basics of her new craft and made accessories for the other overlords in the dungeon raiding teams. All they really need is more damage. That was the first thing that all of us noticed anyhow. The gear they had was mostly mediocre, but when compounded by the fact that they don't have all the extra skills that come with an advanced class, they really suffer. It's like the advanced class skills do much more damage per strike at the same level, even though they're not at the epic skill level of damage. So, Dana was focusing on adding skill damage, attack speed, and strength to the items. For the warriors, even when they were using cleave or slash from a distance, the power behind the sword increased the damage done by the attack, so they still gained from increased strength. It was a strange combination, but who were they to argue with the system's math? The accessories were understated, at the request of the warriors. Mostly simple silver and iron-colored bracelets, rings, and necklaces. But the sculptors of the guild had come up with the perfect warrior accessory. They had made a sand cast to create skull rings that were black gold on one side, white gold on the other. They were cast small, as the material was totem-ranked and valuable, but the section black and white was very obviously Darklight host, and the skull ring motif was incredibly popular with the warriors. It was a bit of a waste to use them to make Overlord-ranked enchantments, but Dana was putting in the effort to make them all epic grade items, so at the very least they were more valuable than the materials. Plus, A single apprentice sculptor could turn out 100 of them in an hour, including buffing them out for use. So, after the cast was made, it was more of a side project for the sculpting team, to keep the others supplied while they worked on the real masterpieces. Even Carl was wearing one now, but he had given his increased luck and mana recovery to such an insane degree that the system decided it was a totem-grade item with only 2 stats. Even inert, the eyes of the ring seemed to absorb the light. On the other hand, he wore the lifelink ring that matched Dana's. Not in appearance, his was a simple mithril ring covered in black runes. But the 2 spells were linked, so you couldn't wound Dana without damage transferring to Carl. At least when they were in range. You know, turning out hundreds of these skull rings really is boring. Dana sighed as she poured mana into another item. That is true. The drudgery of making bulk items is way worse than the complexity of making custom items. But think of how happy all the warriors will be. First, we upgraded their tanks, and now we're giving them rings that will increase their damage and attack speed. That's what they needed to get through the improved bosses now that they've unlocked hard mode in the dungeon. All that extra loot will be well worth the effort. Have they invited you guys along again? Carl replied. Dana nodded. Yeah, they want us to be part of the hard mode group every week now. The Alliance is skipping this week because of the winter social. But the week after, we will be back at it again. Perfect. Lots of time for everyone to get prepared. There is no holiday in Drod this week, so they'll get all stocked up. I just hope that the new tailors survive Ray's affection. As I understand it, they're all descended from weaver spiders who specialize in silk production and tailoring. But they're not an aggressive species like the bloodbath spider. So Ray probably terrifies them.
Carl joked.
Dana frowned. I never thought of that. The majority of the beastkin are only a little terrified of Ray, and that's perfectly normal. But as fellow spiders, it's likely much worse for the tailors. Ray looked up as she sensed Carl talking about her. She was overseeing the clothing production lines in Drod, who were making winter-themed gowns for last-minute sales in the city tomorrow. The Alliance members all had pretty dresses for the event already, so it was time to start spreading her outfits around the city. But Carl had misunderstood the nature of spiders. Weaver spiders and their beastkin offspring were not prey to the bloodbath spiders. They made huge, beautiful webs that caught all sorts of prey and naturally offered it to their powerful protectors as tribute. The instinct extended to the beastkin, who turned instantly compliant and submissive when Ray gave them instructions. She had managed to turn the process into a smooth and efficient sweatshop within an hour of arriving. But she was a benevolent mistress. She would only ask them to work a half day. She wasn't too picky about which 12 hours they worked, but overnight was better for sales, so she could take orders and make deliveries while the other species were awake. That also worked for the tailors, as they were nocturnal by nature. They were also being paid very well for their work, and the quality of life here was much better than at home, where the more physical spider species tended to bully them. Not that Ray didn't, but she bullied them as their boss, not for fun. Plus, the only thing that she demanded they do for her was work with the most beautiful, high-quality silks. They might not be obsession demons, but their love of crafting silk was nearly as intense. When she was finished tonight, Ray was certain that she would have at least 50 new dresses completed, with only a few in each style, as she had assigned each tailor a different project. She loved it when a plan came together. The blacksmiths and sculptors hardly even noticed that there were tailors taking over 2 of the buildings, one for living and one for working. The Drod Cavern, as they had taken to calling it, was still over half empty, even with all of them present and the orphanage brimming with kids. 2 buildings full of beastkin who only came outside once a day was hardly noticeable. Chapter 1155. Better Nilla Flavor. By the time that the day of the winter social came around, Dana's fingers were thoroughly worn out and ready for a break. But the Guild Alliance looked wonderful. Everyone was rushing about the complex in their finery, looking for final personalized touches, reclaiming items that had been lent out, or meeting friends for a trip into the city. Carl waved as Ray appeared in the room with a smug smile and began dumping a pile of clothes on the table. Did the morning's sales go well? He asked. Ray clicked her teeth the same way that she clicked her mandibles when she was happy. Yes, they paid extra to get just the right outfit this morning. I'm nearly sold out, but I don't know what to dress Nilla in. He says that he's not going out, so he hasn't let me style him yet. She explained. Have you informed him of this yet? Dana asked. Multiple times. I informed him that it was non-optional, and I've even made him a more manly umbrella, since he objected to the lace parasol. Now, come help me pick the right suit to complement my dress. I am taking him for coffee, Ray explained. From the other side of the room, Ophelia laughed. What's this? Ray is feeling romantic. Ray snorted in amusement. He has a skill that I want. It hides his presence without hiding his body. But he won't come out so I can learn it. Today I will make him. So, you intend to make him so uncomfortable that he hides his presence to make people stop noticing him, and then you can study the skill? Ophelia clarified. Ray nodded. That was exactly it. Shouldn't you give him a present for helping? Ophelia asked. What do you think that this is? That's just decoration. You wanted to decorate him anyhow. How many of the others dress like you? Why don't you get your Carl to make him a skill book in exchange for the training? The Werbear explained. Oh, bribery. Yes, that would work too. Carl, do you have a skill book?
Karl chuckled.
In fact, I do. We've been making them for all the totems, and he's a druid, so he's near the top of the list. Give him this book of Terrorize. 10% more damage per rank is a lot of bonus damage for a totem. That should be enough to bribe him to teach you the skill you want. Ray plucked the book from his hands and did a happy twirl. Thank you. Now, ruffles or cobweb lace? Carl turned to Dana for the answer. Cobweb lace sleeves. That one there. He will have a shirt under so the outer coat can be purely decorative. Then give him the red tie that matches his eyes. And these boots. That is perfect. Good luck. Ray waved, then gathered all the clothing on the table and vanished. Why does it feel more like Ray has adopted a puppy who didn't know that he was up for adoption than that she's gotten a boyfriend? Ophelia asked. Because I'm certain that is how she sees him. Don't forget that bloodbath spiders usually kill their mates so that they don't mate with any other female.
Karl replied.
Oh right, forgot about that. A few houses over, a girlish shriek shattered the calm as Ray appeared in Nilla's bedroom holding a pile of clothing and a skill book. Good morning. I brought you an outfit for our coffee date. Put that on and then I have a business proposal for you. I want your ability to hide your presence, and in exchange for learning it, I will give you this book of Terrorize. How did you even get in here? I put up a barrier. The vampire demanded. Using Night Haunter, of course. I can just walk through the wall. There is no point in blocking the window and the door. Now, I think that your dungeon team will love it if you learn Terrorize. That's 80% more base damage on every attack. It really does add up quickly. Ray held up the clothing and gave it a shake, encouraging him to get moving. The coffee had better be worth this. Do you know what time it is? 11 in the morning. That's why I brought the modified umbrella. It's going to be bright on the way to the coffee shop. And that didn't strike you as too early to wake a vampire? He asked. Ray shook her head. I even let you sleep in this morning. 5 whole hours after the sun came up because it's a holiday. We are going to need to have a long talk about biology one of these days. Nilla muttered as he equipped the outfit Ray brought. Then she handed him the book, and Nilla began to bounce on the balls of his feet in excitement. This was going to be a huge change for him. A passive skill that would nearly double his base damage output. Then, his eyes went vacant as he used the book. He had been pulled into the class change interface, and there were actual options there for him. He had gathered 10 other skills that weren't part of his skill tree, mostly warrior skills that could be used by druids. But this was the first time he had options. Blood Druid, Woodland Warlock, Forest Guardian. Oh, that last one was good. It was an advanced druid and it was tanking focused. Plus, it had spirit guardians. That sounded like druid golems to him. Take that, mages. With his new class selected, Nilla returned to reality and found Ray waiting for him with an expectant smile. Forest Guardian. A tanking druid with spirit guardians. Should we go and see what they are before we leave? He asked. Ray grabbed him around the waist and moved him to the lawn. Yes, let's see what it gives you. Oh, we should hold betting first. Did you want to tell the others? Nilla laughed at the excited spider. Yes. Let's call them outside and give them a chance to wager on what a vampire druid's spirit guardian will be. He couldn't predict what the system was going to give him, even if he followed the advice the mages got and focused on what he wanted. Chapter 1156. Winter Social Parade. The guild had already heard their conversation, as neither Ray nor Nilla was trying to be quiet. Even Dana and Carl had come out across the street to see the show. They were actually making sure that Ray wasn't abducting the vampire against his will, but from her perspective it looked the same. Everyone, the vampire druid tank, Naxarimus Orovius Dante, has advanced his class today. He is now a forest guardian. One of his new class skills is a forest guardian. We are now accepting guesses and wagers on what it will come out looking like. Ray declared, loudly enough to be heard over the crowd. The crowd cheered for him as a totem rank tank advancing was a big deal, especially when it was an advancement from druid. Carl waited for the guessing game to end while Dana played with the ring on her finger. She had transformed into fox beastkin form today, and the ring felt strange on her hand, though it still fit perfectly. She wasn't originally going to go out as anything but human, but the dress looked so much better against her fox fur that she couldn't resist. All right, we have our guesses. Now, Nilla, please show us the guardian spirit, Ray shouted. She's a surprisingly effective hype person. Dana laughed as Ray made a theatrical reveal gesture toward the vampire. Right? Who knew that was part of her skill set? Carl agreed. And the winner is bears. Ray called as a massive red ethereal bear appeared beside the vampire. Carl was reasonably sure that was not the natural state of a spirit guardian, but as he was a vampire, it had been altered by his affinity for blood. It was definitely impressive, though.
Dana left.
You know, we can do the same thing for you and Ray when you reveal your greater golems for the first time.
Carl chuckled.
You know that Rays are going to be bigger, better spiders. He had a point. Ray would be very disappointed if her extra golems were not spiders. The entire population of the Xylaz Guild House came out to join them, and Carl led the procession out of the house to join the gathering in the market, where the first selections for the day's fashion shows would be held. The other guilds quickly joined them, as everyone was preparing to head out anyhow. It made for a truly impressive group, nearly 1,000 strong, all walking together, with most of them in overlord and totem ranked formal wear, and exquisitely made accessories. They were attracting attention with every step, and people were coming out of the stores to stare at them, as if the Guild Alliance was a parade. In a way, they were, Carl decided. They were almost all wearing something made by Ray, with accessories that the Darklight host had enchanted. So they were basically a walking billboard or a parade of trade goods. Look at that. They've done up the whole alliance for the show. Even the staff members are wearing luxury dresses and trade skill accessories. What the hell? What sort of guild alliance is that? Carl chuckled as he heard the spectators gossiping about the alliance. The first thing that he had all the runecrafters do was make something for themselves. But the most popular items from Drod were the utility items, and that included cooking, cleaning, and other basic tasks. But those weren't items that a normal guild would have here. So, seeing all the simple magical rings on the royal ranked staff members of the other guilds was a shock. They couldn't be combat members, there were no dungeons here for them to fight in, and no wild monsters of their rank. So, the accessories had to be profession-related. A few of the members had even decided to show off a little extra, and they had unequipped items that they were wearing to use them as a show of wealth. With the item worn openly and not equipped, anyone with basic identification skills could see what stats it had. Here, where the system was nearly fully active, that meant everyone. It didn't take long for the crowd to recognize that all of the displayed items were made by the same person, and that the person in question was standing with the Guild Alliance, escorting a team from his guild in exquisite fashion through the city. Damn, the Nara group managed to get an actual crafting guild on their side. The next round of challenges are going to be brutal. One of the other myths sighed. I heard a rumor that they're changing things next year. perhaps they'll cap it so that a few of the big guilds don't get all the best dungeons. One of the others, a white dragon cleric, suggested hopefully. The warriors laughed. They couldn't see the king caring enough about what they were doing here on the shores to do that. All that really mattered to him was that people kept coming, and the money kept flowing. If you didn't try to take a dungeon entirely off the market, he wouldn't care. Well, if they don't, I can guarantee that the Nara group is getting at least 1 or 2 extra dungeons. In a duel, both Hugo and Div are monsters. If they're fully decked out in custom-tailored epic gear, they can definitely snag an extra victory. The warrior retorted. Carl smiled as he heard the news. He already knew that would not be an issue this year. The formal announcement was going to be during the festivities tonight, when the king of Sholaha came to greet the people and give them a blessing for the upcoming year. Hugo led the column through the city, showing off at all the best spots so that they could say that they were seen, and then join the party. But they didn't even have to finish their tour to get noticed. "Miss, would you and your partner be interested in joining the judging? We have a category for most stylish Gothic outfits, and I believe you would both be contenders." A woman with a clipboard asked. Ray grabbed Nilla and pushed him forward, almost moving him out from under his umbrella as he flailed to keep his balance. "Of course we will join the judging. The world needs to see this fashion." Ray agreed. "Might I get your names?" the volunteer asked. "Naxarimus Orovius Dante and Ray Bloodbath." Ray replied. The volunteer froze. "Did you say Dante and Bloodbath?" Ray nodded happily. "That is us. Easy to remember." Chapter 1157, Beasts and Bookstores. What Ray didn't know was that the woman had only now realized that she was a transformed magical beast. So, while Nilla's heritage made him vampire nobility, declaring herself as a bloodbath spider at the totem rank was absolutely terrifying for the average citizen. Of course, very easy to remember. "Thank you. I will see you at the judging center later. Here are your entry cards. Just show them at any of the contestant entry points, and they will show you where to be." Goth, Emo, and Rogue class judging starts at dark. Arriving half an hour early is advisable, as the event can be quite crowded. The volunteer explained, recovering from her shock. Ray patted Nilla on the back. "We're going to be a big hit. Now, are we done walking yet? The coffee is on the next block." The vampire laughed. "We can break away from the group. It's not a rule that we all have to stay together. It's just the boss wanting to show off." With that new information, Ray wrapped an arm around Nilla and activated perfect camouflage to step away from the group without being noticed. Some of the totems and myths could surely still see them in the bright daylight, but it didn't disrupt anything as they moved away from the group and into the crowd. Then, she deactivated the skill and led the way to the coffee shop. "What was your plan for after coffee?" Nilla asked, resigned to spending a whole day outdoors. "How do you feel about people watching from somewhere up in the tree branches? I can make swinging chairs and an awning," Ray suggested. Nilla laughed. "It is prohibited to climb the trees in the park. Otherwise, the drunks would break half the branches while showing off for the girls." Ray sighed. "In that case, we can just find somewhere out of the sun." A squeaky voice from beside them caught her attention. "Miss? Sir? If you would like to be out of the direct sunlight, our winery is doing an afternoon tasting event today. It is held in the aging cellar, and the temperature is just right," the mouse beastkin suggested. The vampire and spider smiled at each other. "That would be perfect," they agreed in unison. Thor saw Ray drag her living mannequin off, and it gave him the same idea. "Tessa, why don't we stop for a juice as well? There is a lovely shop there by the beach," he suggested. That started a mass exodus just as they had reached the market, and there were thousands of shops and stalls for the members to visit. Carl nodded to Div and Hugo, then motioned to a grand stone building, marked with magical sigils that Carl knew were supposed to approximate the runes of runecrafting, but which were drawn by someone without the skill. "I believe that my lovely bride may enjoy that store, so we will part ways here," he explained. "The Mage Tower? Yes, if you've got the budget, it's the best place on the continent to get skill books and rare potions. Other than the Blue Dragon libraries, that is," Hugo agreed. Carl led Dana to the store, where a totem-ranked guard stood at either side of the door, vetting their potential customers. Champion, Mississippi, welcome. Please enter. We were hoping that you would visit us today. The guard greeted them. That was a bit startling, as they had only just walked out of the Alliance complex half an hour ago. Inside the shop, the lighting was dim, but magically even, with no shadows or unreadable covers on the displayed tomes. Each of the most valuable tomes was set into a glass pillar with its own light, creating beams of light in the shop, while the less valuable ones were set along the walls. There was an excited commotion at the back of the shop, and a young demoness came running up to Carl. War Champion, you are earlier than expected. Would you like to join our contest? She asked. Contest? That wasn't what he was here for. It's an inscription contest. We're making skill books, winner takes all. I heard from my cousin Ashbringer that you can make them, she explained. That makes sense now, but we had actually come in to shop, Carl replied, and the demon visibly deflated. The shopkeeper cleared his throat, and Carl nodded politely for the mythic rank blue dragon to speak his mind. If you would like to join them, I can accompany Miss Dana around the shop, and then lead her to the reading area. It has a view of the contest tables, and if she should find something interesting but not a usable skill book, she will be able to read while your challenge is ongoing. In order to make them both interesting and punctual, we have put a 1-hour time limit on the contests. It prevents grand magic from being transcribed, but it also allows for rematches. He explained. What are the judging criteria? Carl asked. The most valuable tome copied within 1 hour wins. However, if you can transcribe one that we do not have in stock, it is an automatic round win. No repetition is allowed, but more than one contestant can do the same tome during a round. In that case, first to finish wins. The dragon explained. That sounded like a very blue dragon god-approved challenge. Dana waved her hand at Carl. I will let the librarian show me the store. You go play with the inscriptionists. Carl nodded. All right, let's see this contest list. Is it a full list of what the store has in stock for skill books? The demoness nodded. It is. There are only so many available skill books, after all. Right? Carl had forgotten that even here, they struggled to get copies of most skills in written form. If you got a rare one, you could make a fortune just lending it to an inscriptionist to make duplicates before you used it. Carl scanned the list and then nodded in satisfaction. Force Slam, the Haint's telekinetic ability, was not on the list, and it was nearly as easy to write out as Cleave. Not a particularly complex or powerful skill, but a rare and versatile one. Chapter 1158. Easy Win. Carl took a seat, and then looked up and saw a writing desk suspended in a glass orb above them. It was covered in incredibly ancient magical runes, and from what Carl could see, it was intended to make all the materials you needed to create a skill book while working at it. That was brilliant. Force Slam wasn't too hard to create, at least for Carl. But his skill wasn't inscription, it was skill book, and it had far fewer conditions for creation, but far stricter ones on what books he could make. So, he got out suitable ink from Remy's supply stash of plant extracts, and grabbed a stack of paper from the middle of the table. On the count of 3, you may begin, the demoness announced. Carl noticed that she wasn't participating. She was the store staff serving as referee for the event. He should have known that a wrath demon was not suited to be an inscriptionist. The first time that the pen dripped and ruined a page with an ink blot, they would lose it. Carl quickly began to write out the small booklet that was Force Slam, and then sent a surge of mana through the papers with Skill Book to form the cover and activate the tome. Finished. He spoke quietly and looked up from his work. One of the others was already finished, and Carl smiled as he saw Rend on the table in front of them. You only win if you finish in an hour. The dragonkin mouthed silently. So that was the trick. He was wagering that anyone who picked a skill book more complex and valuable than Rend would not finish on time, and would therefore lose by default. Carl checked his watch. He had taken nearly 40 minutes just to write out Force Slam. If he had chosen anything more difficult, he really might have gone over. They sat silently, browsing the magazines on the table as the others worked. When the last pen was lifted, the hour was long past, and the last few to finish were more than 10 minutes past the timer. But nobody stopped them, as the contest was a winner-take-all format, and nobody needed a half-finished skill book. They had all chosen basic warrior and mage skills. Cleave, rend, lightning bolt, magic armor, and a copy of Stomp that must have had an error somewhere as it failed to activate. The blue dragon came out from the sitting area, where he had been waiting with Dana. "Excellent work, everyone. We will fix the error in Stomp for the winner. Now, let's see what the pricing chart says," he announced. "We have one copy of magic armor that was finished over the time limit, as well as Stomp, which has failed to activate. So, in third place we have Rend. Then Lightning Bolt and Magic Armor tied in value, with Lightning Bolt being completed first. However, our winner for this round is Force Slam, which is not currently in the store's inventory. The spell is part of the Druid arsenal under certain skill builds, but I have no record of it having ever passed through our stock," he announced. The other inscriptionists cheered, and an older dragonkin rushed out to begin flipping through the Stomp book, looking for the error. They cast some sort of spell that erased a portion of the page, and then wrote a new paragraph. That let the book successfully complete, and the final skill book formed. Now, would the winner like to keep his winnings? Or perhaps trade them for store credit? The blue dragon asked. It didn't take a genius to see that he was hoping for store credit as an answer. "Dana, did you find anything good?" Carl asked. She nodded. "I did. I found a whole collection of mystic cooking cookbooks for Lotus and an alchemy book for Remy." The shopkeeper looked a bit sheepish. As it happens, her advancement through multiple mage-related classes has given her a much larger repertoire of skills than our shop stocks. Carl politely didn't mention that she could make skill books just as easily as he could. That wasn't information that anyone else knew outside the core of the Darklight host. So, if it could be kept secret, he wouldn't have to worry about people bothering Dana about it. That is a pretty impressive haul. Finding just one new tome is difficult enough, but to find them for two different specialties, this truly is the best stocked shop around. "Shopkeeper, I will trade my winnings for store credit. It should cover our purchases here today, and anything left over we will save for the next time a guild member needs a new skill."
Karl replied.
"That is excellent news. A new spell for the shop is a huge accomplishment. To prevent unfairness, winners have to sit out the next round. But you are welcome to peruse our shelves. Not everything is a skill book. We also have fiction, history, theory, education, and many other books available," he offered. "Oh, that is a good idea. Our guild library is pretty good, but I bet that we don't have some of these. Now that we've got Sapphire looking after it, we should work on expanding the inventory." Carl agreed, even if her presence was giving the nobles of Drod heart palpitations. "The mythic librarian Sapphire?" the blue dragon in charge of the shop asked.
Karl nodded.
"She joined our guild recently after accepting a trade skill. She is currently at our Drod guild house, doing inventory on the guild library there. We loaded it with surplus books from a historic bookstore, and the variety is somewhat unusual, as were the notes written in some of the educational tomes. Most of them were good advice, but according to the dragon, some of the students making the notes had clearly been failing their classes, and it was better for everyone if the books were scrubbed of bad advice before anyone else read them. But Mick said that she spent most of her time with a romance book in one hand as she sorted through educational tomes using a magical skill. Chapter 1159, Diversified Guild Library. Over the course of the next hour, Carl and Dana followed the shopkeeper around, while sending messages to Sapphire about books that she wanted for the guild library. He had no shortage of them, and there were multiple floors of more mundane titles, away from the main showroom floor, which was reserved for the skill books that the vast majority of his patrons were here to find. "Is it your intention to start a library of your own? Public one, I mean," he asked as the list of titles neared 500 and the store credit for the traded skill books was running low. Carl shook his head. "No, we were thinking that we would reserve the guild library for the guild members and their children. That way, they have somewhere that they can go to gain knowledge, the dragons have reference material, and we can stock skill books for them to advance their classes. As a blue dragon, you may or may not have already heard about the success of our experiments. The shopkeeper nodded eagerly. The librarians at totem rank and higher all share a group chat. Lady Sapphire already shared the success of the Paladin Progression Project, and the confirmation that it can work for other classes. If that really is all that is needed to unlock advanced classes for all these warriors, the research in that project will revolutionize the world itself. It is wonderful, brilliant new knowledge. The man was nearly vibrating with excitement, a state that they saw Lotus in nearly every day. But it was unavoidable for dragons and dragon clerics when their divine aspect was mentioned in conversation. Indeed it is. We're going to be doing more experiments later, both with base warriors to see if there are other suitable classes to advance them into, and to other classes to improve their versatility and damage output. It is our theory that the difficulty of many of the dungeons is not so much due to the gear limits, or they would give better loot. Instead, we have a theory that the dungeons are only difficult because of poor group composition. If the totems entering had a properly diversified set of skills, it is possible that they would have a much easier time passing the obstacles.
Karl explained.
The shopkeeper smiled. Oh, you have a point. Like the corrupted Naga swamp. The monsters are all under the effect of a zombie curse, and it affects the members of the raiding party as well. It is nearly impossible to even enter without a shaman, as their area purification totem poles are the only effective countermeasure against the corruption. Well, unless you have someone with consecrated ground, or another holy magic purification area effect.
Karl chuckled.
And that's not common outside the upper ranks of the dragon clergy. We do have a member who has it. Well, at least 2 that I have seen use it. But with its limited radius, I can see how it would be difficult to do a dungeon fight like that. The old dragon turned and plucked a book from a shelf nearly 2 stories above their heads. Add this to your library as well. It's advanced totem crafting for shamans. Not a skill book, but if they're talented, they will be able to make multiple new types of them with the lessons in this book. He wasn't even finished speaking when Remy appeared in her shimmering golden ball gown and stretched out all 4 arms for it. Librarian, this is Remy, one of my bonded partners, and a Naga shaman queen. Like the blue dragons, she also has an insatiable thirst for new knowledge. And this book is perfectly suited to her class. Karl explained. The dragon smiled and let her have it, then smiled as Remy cheered and raced off to the reading area with her new treasure. Looks like we've lost Remy for the day, but she did make it outside, and that is an accomplishment for her. Dana noted. She is not a social person? Usually, Naga queens are quite outgoing. The dragon asked. Dana shook her head. She loves people, but if you get her focused on shaman spells or alchemy, she will lose entire days at a time. Naga don't actually need to sleep, you see. The shopkeeper nodded. Blue dragons are known to sleep only once a century, resting for a few years at a time. However, most of us prefer to keep to a daily schedule so that we don't miss years' worth of news. Do you have a warded reading room? I suspect that she will want to test totems as she learns them, and that might not be safe with a whole table full of inscriptionists sitting nearby. Karl asked. Of course. There is a practical learning area at the back with private rooms and comfortable chairs. I do believe that the serpent-friendly one is unoccupied. He replied.
Dana giggled.
Serpent-friendly? He nodded. With large warming beanbag chairs, which are better suited to serpentine bodies and cooler body temperatures. One of the staff members was already leading Remy in that direction as the distracted Naga read the intro chapter to her new educational tome. The shop is a 24-hour establishment. Just let us know if your friend is needed for something, and we will go fetch her. The blue dragon whispered. You really do know your clientele well. Thank you, librarian. Perhaps we will come back later with another new skill book or 2 for you. Everyone loves new skills. You are both welcome anytime. Thank you for your patronage. He agreed. Karl led Dana back out of the Mage Tower, leaving Remy to her own devices for the day. Would you like to sightsee? Or perhaps get a snack? Ray has dragged Nilla to the coffee shop, with plans for a wine tasting. Kara and Lotus are at a bakery with Ophelia, and Thor has taken Tessa to the beach to sunbathe. Karl asked. They let a chaos badger in a bakery? Willingly? With a green dragon cleric.
Dana replied incredulously. Karl Laukit.
Actually, Kara arriving with an overlord-ranked green dragon priestess makes it somewhat more believable, don't you think? As much as she hated to admit it, he was right. Seeing Lotus and Kara together was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The presence of one explained the presence of the other, no matter where they were. Chapter 1160. Wrong door? Dana smiled up at Carl. I have an idea. People are certain to notice soon that you are the one who made the vast majority of what the Guild Alliance is wearing. So, if we stay in the market, you're just going to get swarmed by people wanting to make an order. If we go somewhere a bit more private and exclusive, then only a few people will be able to get to you, and we can lounge around for the afternoon. I think that a day of people watching is what we need, both as a way to show off Ray's fashion, and just to see more of the residents of the city. There has to be something here that we haven't seen before, and they can't all be dumb enough to start trouble. One of the bookstore workers looked up at them, alarmed. Are you expecting Carl shook his head. Not long ago, someone challenged to try to forcibly claim members of our guild as their own. I don't think that anyone will be so brazen today during the festival. The clerk looked immensely relieved. That is true, very few people would challenge during the winter social for anything less than a direct and unforgivable insult. The immortal regent is in the city today, and he takes a very dim view of such duels. Especially ones that don't have an excellent reason. She explained. Thank you. That is good to know. I will avoid doing anything hot-tempered. Carl replied with a wink. He didn't look like the sort that would start trouble to her. But then the young magic demon wasn't an expert on all things totem-ranked and higher. The people with that much power had their own set of rules, and they didn't always make sense to anyone else, especially to demons who spent most of their life in libraries with the blue dragons. Carl led Dana out the door and found himself in the lobby of a restaurant, instead of in the street, as expected. Well, that is new. Did we use the wrong door? He muttered. Lord Carl and Lady Dana? This way, please. Your companions are waiting. The host informed them. The man was clearly a dragon of some sort, but in his humanoid form, Carl couldn't tell what sort, which was unusual on its own. Perhaps he wasn't one of the chromatic dragons? It would explain his lack of the distinctly divine aura that they gave off. The host led them through the posh restaurant, filled with guests in their winter social finest, and sat them at a table where two elderly powerhouses were glaring at each other. Immortal Regent, Supreme Lady Matilda. It's a pleasure to meet you both again, Carl announced with a slight bow for the duo. Dana curtsied politely, and Matilda giggled. You should stay in that form more often. You are absolutely adorable. But for your wedding, definitely human. That's the way to go. Both of you. The kiss scene won't look right if you don't. Beastkin kisses are all sloppy, not at all photogenic. Azof rubbed his temples, and Carl felt a pang of sympathy for him. He had been dealing with Matilda for tens of thousands of years, and he was the only friend she could possibly have who might understand her frame of reference. After a second, he forced a smile onto his face. Congratulations both of you on your upcoming wedding. It appears that my attendance is assured. No need for an RSVP invitation. Matilda smirked, and the immortal sighed. Please join us for lunch. There is a fashion show here at the restaurant for high society, and I thought it would be best to invite the both of you, as there are both male and female categories, and the artist herself is preoccupied. Matilda explained. Her chaotic aura was remarkably subdued today, nearly as low as Kara's. It felt off to Carl, but to the others in the room it was surely a kindness. A passing waitress heard her words and paused. Is the lady intending to join the show? I can take your details now. Just your name, guild alliance, and the name of your designer with any affiliation that they might have. Having a divine fox among the contestants would be a huge bonus for the show, and her boss would definitely give her a bonus for signing Dana. Dana of the Darklight Host, part of the Nara Group Alliance. My dress was made by Lady Ray Bloodbath of the Darklight Host, and the accessories by Carl of the Darklight Host, who is standing beside me. The waitress blinked slowly, mesmerized by Dana's voice. Then pure joy spread across her expression. Wonderful, thank you, Lady Dana. Sir, were you wishing to enter as well? Or will you allow the lady to represent your brand? She asked. Matilda clicked a fingernail on the table. He will enter. I want to start sending out wedding invitations today, and only a few people truly understand who the bride and groom are. Understood, Supreme Lady. The waitress squeaked, then scurried off. Matilda sighed. I have done so much to restrain my aura, and still my identity terrifies people. Such a shame. But after the show, I can guarantee that the celebrity portion of our guest plan will be taken care of. Is there a particular reason that we need to be famous? Dana asked as Carl adjusted her seat for her, then joined her at the table. Of course, you'll be... No, wait, I can't tell you that part yet. It would ruin the surprise. But yes, it's important that you be considered famous in Sholaha before you get bored with being here. Azaf sighed. What she's trying to say is that she intends to meddle in your future, for better or worse. For your sakes, I hope that it ends up for the better, but there are no guarantees with chaos. Carl gave the long-suffering immortal a pat on the shoulder. Don't worry too much about it. I've gotten fairly used to chaotic influences on my life. Azaf shook his head. If Carl thought that the Chaos Badger was a chaotic influence, he had only begun to grasp the true nature of the Chaos Dragon. But at least he was an avatar of the World Dragon. The Planeswalker ability would let him come home if he accidentally ended up in an adjacent reality. It might take him time to get enough skill points to acquire the skill, but he would be able to return one day. Chapter 1161. Why only Carl? Azaf examined the odd pair. They were well suited to each other, and their energies resonated on very similar wavelengths. But only Carl was showing the sort of improved mental and soul power that would be expected of the power matrix. Had neither of them thought to ask Dana to start on it yet? Sure, she was only an overlord, but she would be a totem soon enough, and it was never too soon to start preparing for the mythic rank. Carl, I see that you've improved your power matrix to the 27-pointed focus. But Miss Dana hasn't started yet. Was there a reason for the delay? He asked. That's not a class-exclusive ability? Carl asked. Azaf facepalmed in dismay. No, not at all. All mage-type classes need to do it to reach mythic rank. The stronger the power matrix, the faster their mana and soul power will grow. In theory, most species can make it to mythic rank if they can perfect the 9-focus formation. Some won't live long enough at that rate, though. But there is no restriction on what classes can use it, only on the mental fortitude and mana levels needed to start. Oh right, you're from Kaptumia continent, the Golden Dragon Nation, right? They probably still think it's only monks who can use it, since they start with the skill. He realized. Carl nodded reluctantly. Indeed, he had thought it was an exclusive thing, and that mages had their own ways. That is fine, we can fix that right away. Your personal matrix isn't suitable for her. Anyhow, you used... What is that? Azaf replied. Supreme Lady Matilda. I used her as the template for my matrix. The instructions said that I should use a greater being whose form I could clearly focus upon to shape the matrix. And she's the most powerful being I have ever personally encountered.
Carl, explain it.
Matilda smirked at her ancient companion. See, you were all worried that he wouldn't be able to comprehend chaos, and here he is using it to shape his entire power matrix. It's actually not a bad likeness. How did you even get to see her dragon form? Azaf asked. She showed me once, but mostly I just asked Kara. The two of them mentally chat quite frequently, and the badger has a vivid imagination.
Carl, explain it.
Azaf flicked his finger, casting a spell over Carl. Your fundamental rule focus is mana manipulation, excellent choice for immortality. But I see that you have an affinity for fire, holy magic, and chaos? To even touch on the truth of chaos is unusual. But it does explain how you can comprehend her form well enough to use it as a focus. I will put an image into Miss Dana's mind, along with the fundamentals of the skill to improve her power matrix. I see that her mind is better attuned to the god of magic, and that is a power matrix that I know well, so I will grant that knowledge. It should help keep the two of you balanced after your wedding. He explained. Dana's expression went blank as Azaf cast a spell, and Carl watched curiously. So, you have a skill similar to mine? That teaches skills to others? He asked. Azov shook his head. No, what I have is memory transfer. It just shows them my memories of a thing. In this case, lectures and the textbook on how to implement the process. Matilda nodded. He literally wrote the book on how to use the power matrix to reach immortality. The actual textbook that the Dragon Isles use. Dana smiled as she slowly began to comprehend what Azov was teaching her. That is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I understand so much better now, she gasped. Azov nodded. Now, you just need to grasp one of the fundamental rules in a way that truly suits you, and you will be on your way to mythic status and immortality. That sounds like it is easier said than done. I see it in your notes, and I understand the concept, I just don't really get the rules themselves, if that makes sense. Dana agreed. Azov's gentle smile said that was inevitable. If the truth of the universe was so easily imparted, we would all be immortals. Though, if the two of you spent a bit of time in the immortal realm, you might grasp them more quickly. I would not recommend that at this point. The immortal realm is not a safe place, and those not immortals are not considered people there. He explained.
Karl frowned.
Is that why they don't come here to assist with the issues in this world? Azov shook his head. No, the immortals who live here, and the Supreme Lady, cast a spell to hide this world so that they didn't come to raid the world for slaves. Otherwise, the issues that this world has would be the least of its current concerns. Well, that's not disturbing at all. Is the power disparity of the immortals really that large? Carl asked. Matilda shrugged. Well, the actual immortal ranked residents aren't considered much of anything either, especially if they're older. The ones with power in the immortal realm are the legends and demigods. Few reach that level, even fewer of them die. So, they've all carved out their own kingdoms in the immortal realm. Once you get there, you will understand. The immortal realm isn't a single planet like this is. Instead, the more powerful beings create worlds, continents, or even just cities, floating in the void. Once you become an immortal, sustaining yourself off your internal mana isn't a problem, so moving in the void becomes possible. You already know the basic skill of survival in the immortal realm, the ability to make a tiny world. Just expand that by 100 with fully formed rules, and you will be close to what the lesser domains in the immortal realm are like. The dragon paused, then smiled. It might do you good to visit just to learn the feeling of truly powerful mana. I will tell you when you're ready. Chapter 1162. Casual Flex. Round after round of food was brought to them as the other guests socialized. Everyone took a moment to give Carl and Dana envious glances for their spots of honor with the two most powerful beings in the room, and many had realized that they were members of the Supreme Ladies Guild. That was a curiosity that they couldn't ignore. But very few were brave enough to go to their table and socialize. They would wait for Carl and Dana to join the crowd. Will all the contestants for the fashion show please unequip any worn items they wish others to see the bonuses on, and come to the front of the stage? The host announced. That's our signal. Supreme Lady, Immortal Regent. It has been a pleasure. Carl announced. Oh, we will be here waiting for you when you finish. We have much to discuss tonight, and Azov gives himself an ulcer every time that I come to visit. Matilda replied with a smirk. Carl unequipped all his items, but left them on. If the guests wanted to see anything that he was wearing, they could. After all, Ray had more of it for sale. The cat demon and the divine fox walking hand in hand to the stage drew not only attention, but the spotlights, so that everyone could take a better look at them as they approached. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to Carl and Dana of the Darklight Host, the first contestants for our fashion show this evening. All of their fashion was made in-house by the Darklight Host's artisans, and I see over a dozen totem-ranked, totem-grade items on display between them, all with tailored combat abilities, none of it randomized. The announcer declared. Then the excited voice of a second announcer took over. If you look at the dress on Lady Dana, it has been custom-tailored by Ray Bloodbath of the Darklight Host, and finished with runecrafting by Lord Carl. The fabric is totem-ranked demonic spider silk, and the thickness of the weave has been altered to go from gossamer to full coverage without any sewn seams. There are flecks of mythic rank elemental crystals reflecting the light, and they have been integrated into the mana storage spell on the garment. Truly wonderful work. Carl smiled as Dana's ears twitched, the fox version of a blush at the praise for her outfit, and the crowd began to cheer. Lord Carl is in a suit by the same designer, also made of seamless silk, but his has been enhanced with runecrafting to include both percentage-based and flat bonuses to damage reduction. Truly, a fashionable armor piece with self-mending bonuses on it, should it be damaged. Of particular note is his tie clip, which has a totem-ranked holy stone bearing the consecrated ground spell. There were a few appreciative gasps, and then more cheering as Carl and Dana reached the stage. But the contest wasn't entirely about the bonuses on the items, it was about fashionability, and that was entirely subjective. A fact that Ray was rapidly discovering in the best of ways as she paraded Nilla around the wine tasting. It was mostly populated with vampires and other nocturnal species who had dragged themselves out for the big day. And they loved her style. However, most of them were keenly aware that the demonic spider was an apex predator, and that wrapping themselves in her fashion might be misinterpreted by Ray as some sort of higher claim on them. That probably wouldn't stop most of them from buying clothing from her later, but in an enclosed underground space, the possible downsides of the issue were a bit more prominent. Especially when she kept vanishing every time she forgot that she was supposed to be visible to talk to people. She wasn't actually becoming invisible, but with her adaptive coloration, and in a dark wine cellar, her black outfit just naturally blended with the background. Those like Nilla who had thermal vision thought that it was a wonderful trick, but those who relied on regular optical vision were mostly just mildly terrified. Which was the greatest compliment that they could have paid her. At the restaurant, all around Carl and Dana, the stage was rapidly filling with both the models and the crafters who had sponsored them for the evening. There were no poor designs, only the peak of functional fashion. But that didn't mean that there were no standout entrants. On the male side, one particularly flashy dragonkin was getting the majority of attention for his scale-patterned suit that had been made from a monstrous serpent found in one of the mythic dungeons. But on the female side, the resentment was building as the others realized that not only the dress, but the effortless grace of a divine fox had put Dana head and shoulders above the other contestants. Carl and Dana didn't know because they were invited by Azof and Matilda, but there was a substantial prize for the winner, as well as the prestige and networking opportunities that would come from it. Some of these designers were crafting guild leaders from other nations, and getting to know each other was the real benefit to this event. Men, please step forward, and with a show of placards, we will determine the winner of the men's fashion contest. The host announced. Each of our contestants has a number on the stage by their feet. Please write the number on your placard and either raise it or show it to the staff to cast your vote. The host explained. The voting was short, but men's fashion was the sideshow today. There were only so many ways that you could do a suit, and there weren't really any other high-fashion outfits for them that didn't come across as a cosplay in a formal setting like this. If the contest were for armor, not formal wear, the men would be the much larger feature, even if the ladies' armor was still more fashionable. Chapter 1163, Sales Pitch. It didn't take long before the staff had a decision for the male fashion portion of the show. In a resounding victory, we have Gathak, wearing the obliteration python scale fashion of the Amitba Group's master craftsman. The announcer declared. Carl clapped along with the others, as the man in the snake scale suit bowed and waved to the crowd. That was their cue to retreat from the stage and leave the rest of the show to the ladies. Lord Carl, wonderful showing today. I must say, simply exquisite work on behalf of your guild. Tell me, what branch is best to request custom work? One of the mythic mages in the audience asked. The Alliance House here in Xylaz is the practical option, but if you happen to be in Drod, we do have a storefront in our guild house there, and they can take all your measurements and custom stat or skill bonus requests. Carl explained. What about the Darklight host's third location? One of the other mages at the table asked. The Supreme Lady has chosen not to involve herself with the drudgery of crafting, but any of the members there could certainly pass along your request to the other locations. We split our staff based on their preference of residence, so the item may be made in sections, depending on the request.
Carl explained.
I see that mana storage is one of the buffs on Lady Dana's dress. Is that an intentional buff, one that you can replicate? The mage asked, his draconic eyes flashing silver with excitement. Carl took a small mana jade statue out of his inventory and placed it on the table for examination. That is a monarch-ranked mana storage statue, the affordable option for daily use. We stock them in royal and commander rank as well, because they are so popular with warrior-class cleaning staff who have limited mana of their own.
Karl, explain it.
The mages gave each other panicked looks, then stared at the statue again. You have cornered a market that we didn't even know existed, one of them joked. Carl smiled and took out a pair of functional rings, one with a cleaning spell on it, and another with an enchantment to fold laundry. There are many things that can be done with the appropriate application of runecrafting, and not all of them are combat-related. He agreed. The guests at nearby tables were all admiring the craftsmanship on the simple wooden rings, and calculating how much time and effort that would save around their own guild houses. If they could have everything magically cleaned every day, it would change the entire vibe of many of their guild houses, which more closely resembled frat houses than any sort of dignified noble estate. Hiring domestic staff was expensive in Xylaz, but if they could get a magical item designed for cleaning, they could assign a few of the junior members to the duty and actually expect it to get done. The mage slid a handful of mythic rank nature and arcane gems across the table toward Carl, who graciously nodded in acceptance and let him have the 3 items on the table. If you need more like those, we have them in stock at the Drod Guild House. It's open to the public, and much easier to access than the Alliance House that we operate out of here in Xylaz.
Karl, explain it.
The mages smiled. It might take multiple hops for them to get to Drod, but they could all use the portal spell. They could make money reselling these once their alliance had enough. Carl socialized with a few more groups of well-wishers, then rejoined the table with the Immortal Regent and Matilda. Good showing, but I think that you'll get the most important category. Azov greeted him.
Karl nodded.
Some of the other dresses are nice, but I can already see that the one Dana is wearing is getting an extreme level of attention, and not just for the enchantments. Ray's fashion really is the perfect blend of form and function. The announcer cleared his throat. Ladies, can you line up to take a walk down the stage and back? Let everyone get a good look at the fashions you are modeling today? The host requested. That somehow left Dana at the back of the line, as she never tried to push to the front like the others did. But it would work out perfectly, Carl thought. One by one, the ladies strutted down the stage, showing off for the crowd. Many notes were made, and Carl realized that the crowd actually took judging very seriously. They were not just leaders of powerful alliances, but some national leaders and other very wealthy investors who had a vested interest either in fashion or in equipment crafting. Carl could hear his own name mentioned from dozens of tables around the room, so even though she wasn't crossing the stage, Dana still held many people's attention. Then, as the last of the contestants crossed the stage and joined the group, she stepped out from the shadows, letting the spotlight sparkle off the embedded gem flakes in the dress and her fluffy foxtail swish behind her. Carl couldn't help but smirk at the way that half the room's heads moved in time with the swaying of her hips. Fox Charm was a simply overpowered passive ability, and the Dana Mage was all his. She got to the middle of the stage and gave the crowd a twirl, letting them see all the features of the dress, and the audience rose to their feet clapping and cheering. The announcer let them go for half a minute as Dana did her best not to fidget under their scrutiny and continue waving at the guests. Thank you, ladies. Miss Dana, please take your spot, and we will begin the voting on the first category. Esteemed guests, in the category of functional enchantments on accessories, please cast your votes. Just a reminder that the People's Choice winner and the higher judges' rankings may not match. And now Carl knew why everyone was making notes. Chapter 1164, Pageant Queen. But he had enough practice making items to assess them at a glance, and he quickly realized that as far as practical function, none even came close to Dana's. They even had mending and self-cleaning charms on them, just because he had some room to show off. Azov chuckled as Carl came to the same realization that everyone else did. Run crafting was simply overpowered. The other items weren't even close, though there were many totem and mythic-ranked epic-grade items being worn. If there was a category for pure combat power enhancement, Dana might lose. But even against mythic equipment, she wouldn't be losing by too much with the targeted bonuses Carl could add. The staff came and collected the results. Then the announcer came back on stage. Next, we have a more subjective award. Practical fashion. It's easy to add combat bonuses to accessories. But can high fashion be something that you would wear more than once? He asked. The ladies in the crowd laughed. High fashion wasn't intended to be worn more than once. They knew what he meant. If there were multiple events during the day like today, would you be able to wear the same dress all day and be comfortable not only on stage but also in the street and at dinner? Some of these dresses were only chosen for the stage, to the point they had even changed before the presentation, or had remained standing for the entire event so the dress wasn't wrinkled. Ladies, make yourself comfortable. This might take a few minutes, the host declared. Naturally, this was part of the judging, and an excuse for Dana to show off the Darklight host's skills. She took out a large elven steel loop and hook from the guild inventory, and the others were immediately baffled. Then, she hung one of Ray's hammock chairs from it and elegantly reclined, slowly crossing her legs, then fluffing her tail through the back so she could swing comfortably. The hammock chair hook was made by Ashbringer for just this reason, with a single upright, so that the species with wings could lounge without them getting caught on anything or pressed into their backs. Even the host was shocked by her actions. When he said get comfortable, he had meant that they didn't need to be so stiff, but few would dare to actually lounge in a chair like that, for fear of damaging their dress. There was one other eager crafter among the ladies on stage, though. She was circling Dana's chair, trying to understand how it hung just right. The weave is stretchy and weight-sensitive. Would you like to try? Dana asked. The blue dragon girl nodded eagerly, and they switched spots. Dana's dress shook out perfectly as she stood, and the blue dragon sighed happily as she reclined into the chair. Then, she crossed her legs underneath her, tucking her skirts like a young child would, and a few members of the crowd chuckled. She was definitely making herself more comfortable than the host had intended. In fact, she had completely forgotten that they were judging anything, and she took out a book to read while they waited. A mythic-ranked man behind Azoth chuckled. That counts as a technical knockout for the Darklight host, doesn't it? She's completely lost, and they'll have to pry her out of the chair to get her back in the competition. Carl shook his head. It's fine. Dana knows the trick to dealing with juvenile dragons. You just need to get them to focus on something else, and they'll snap right out of it. I think that we can let her keep the chair as well, so she can study it later. The judging ended and Dana poked the dragon on the nose, getting her attention. Time to stand and show off your dress. You can keep the chair and stand. We've got more, she whispered. Oh, right. Thank you. The dragon pressed an item into Dana's palm, and she tossed it in her inventory to check later. It was better not to haggle prices here, as they weren't selling anything valuable. Well, not excessively valuable, as the stand was elven steel, but not enchanted or elaborately engraved. Now, for the category that everyone has been waiting for, the combined voting. Form, function, and fashion. Who wears it best? Please cast your votes. The host declared. The ladies posed and turned to show off the features of their outfits, giving everyone time to make their final decisions, if they hadn't already picked their favorite. That was an easy choice for Carl. It wasn't like he was going to vote against himself. Well, against Dana, but she would surely hold it against him if he did. Again, the results were collected, and then a list was handed to the host. It looks like we've got a clear winner today. In the practical function and practical fashion categories, as well as the judge scoring for the combined voting, we have Dana of the Darklight host as the winner by majority vote. Dana waved at the crowd, and the host handed her a huge bundle of flowers, as well as a small trophy. Matilda snapped her fingers and a magical painting appeared in the air beside her, nearly as real as a photograph. Wonderful showing. Yes, this is a good outcome, the Supreme Lady decided. Dana returned to the table with her prizes, and Matilda gave her a crushing hug from behind so that she didn't squish the flowers. Sit, sit. Now we get to see the interesting part. she explained. The announcer cleared his throat. Today we have a runoff for fan choice. Diana of the Buterum Alliance and Narcissa of the God Crushers have an identical number of fan votes, tying them for the lead in the Fan Choice Award, with Miss Dana having come in a close third. The ladies will now have the chance to compete to gain the approval of the crowd one final time. Matilda's smile told Carl all he needed to know. This was not about posing on stage. Chapter 1165. Competing Auras. As soon as he finished speaking, two competing auras clashed on stage, and the guests cheered, even as they erected barriers over their tables to prevent damage to the weaker members of their parties. But it was just a crude contest to attempt to suppress the other's aura so that they could shine. Carl was sure that he could do far better. Still, it was good entertainment as the two ladies kept the perfect political smiles on their faces as they battled for dominance. They weren't hostile auras, they were carefully calculated to be friendly and welcoming, but at mythic rank they were still far too intense for most of the spectators to handle. Finally, one of the contestants rubbed her temples and retreated from the stage, leaving the other to bow to the crowd and collect the prize. That marked the end of the contest, but it was far from the end of the night's festivities. Plates of dessert treats were brought to the tables along with fresh drinks, and the stage was set up for some sort of dance show that involved a trapeze. That was a new one to Carl, but everyone else seemed excited about the spectacle, so it must be more than just an obscure side act. Please welcome the dancers of the Goddess of Life and Rebirth Temple, the announcer declared, right before a slender beastkin man made a running leap from the trapeze platform to catch the hanging rope and swing to the other side, where three others hopped on and rode it to the various hanging curtains. Slow, sensual music was put on, and the dancers began to twirl and spin in the air, showing off not only an incredible level of strength, but agility and perfect timing as well. This should have words, Dana realized a few minutes into the show. Azov chuckled. It's actually a historical play set to music. The chase and mating of the first bunny saintess. See how they weave between the curtains? It originally showed how the pursuit ran through the long grass. His whispered voice barely carried across the table, but Dana nodded. Now it made more sense. It had just been adapted for a wider audience so that they could get crowds to watch the stories of their goddess, even if they didn't all know what the show was. The music changed to something close to the industrial dance music of the Golden Dragon Nation, and the show changed along with it, bringing in more dancers and what looked like a dramatized battle scene with extra flying beastkin. The show ended with two of the dancers sliding down entwined silk sheets to land on a pile of pillows on the stage, and then a dramatic curtain drop, followed by thunderous applause from the crowd. Once the show was finished, the guests slowly began to make their way out of the restaurant, but Matilda motioned for Carl and Dana to wait. They were soon alone in the formerly packed venue, and Carl heard the staff locking the doors. Perfect, now we can discuss important things. Like the wedding cake, Matilda declared. Carl smiled, while Dana rolled her eyes, becoming used to the dragon's antics after spending so much time wedding planning with her. They already knew the cake flavor and design. Azov cleared his throat. No, that's not what we were planning to talk about after the crowd left. We need to discuss this plan that you have with the blue dragons to start randomly changing people's class assignments. Now, I know that the situation with the warriors isn't normal, and that every class should be able to advance as they increase in rank. That's not the issue. What I wanted to ask is if you would be interested in a little vacation to a region with the opposite issue. They have received a great diversity of classes, but the only system activations have been from those who left the area. Not a single new class activation has occurred on the Nia continent during this resurgence. The mana level is high enough there that they should be keeping up with us here in the Dragon Isles, but for some reason nobody is getting a class at all. Carl smiled, and Dana gave him a poke in the arm to remind him that she had no idea about the Nia continent, or why Carl would know of it. It's where Bishop Misty sent me into the past to find Kara. It was a chaotic place even then, so I can only imagine what it's like now. Carl explained. Azov shrugged. Primitive, mostly. The barbarian tribes and elves control most of the continent. Unlike the other continents, the species didn't really segregate except by terrain. So, you'll find most species in the barbarian tribes and any of the forest folk with the elves. They also have feral dragons which need to be dealt with. Some of them are fugitive criminals from other continents. Most are just juveniles who didn't like the idea of living a civilized and disciplined life. Dana frowned. You're saying that there might be wild dragons flying around burning villages because they're bored or annoyed? Not might. There are, we know that for sure. Azov clarified. But we just couldn't be bothered to deal with it ourselves. Matilda added. Well, I'm sure that the ladies would love to have a new place to explore. Carl agreed. Matilda shook her head. No, it's better if it's just the two of you. Think of it like an advance honeymoon. If you take the others, the future gets all wonky. It's unstable enough just sending Kara with you. But someone needs to keep an eye on your antics. Dana made a squeaking laugh as her eyes filled with amused tears, and she choked on her drink. Did you just say that Kara would be supervising us? Not the other way around. She stammered. Matilda nodded. There might be interference from other planes or mortal realms that is disrupting the natural flow of the continent's mana and system activations. If my suspicion is correct, Kara is the one best suited to dealing with it. Chapter 1166. Who goes? Dana frowned as she seriously contemplated a reality in which Kara might be the responsible member of the party. In the Chaos Plane, all things were possible, but this one still seemed a bit far-fetched in their own reality. Azov sighed. It would also be best if you had the majority of the beasts remain on this continent. If the Darklight host suddenly stops producing goods, my poor secretary will never hear the end of it from your alliance. Carl smirked and patted the immortal on the shoulder. I don't think that will be an issue. We can open a portal to transfer goods back to the store, and I have a separate space for them to work in. Matilda shook her head. The guild functions aren't online there yet. You won't be able to access them without returning, even if you open a portal. It's the same thing in Captumia. I can't even send a message to Orthos, I have to use messengers, and he should have a guild branch house coming online soon. But if you have one of your beasts left behind, they might be able to send you a mental message. I don't know the limits on distance, or what restrictions you might hit. Dana cleared her throat. You are forgetting one crucial fact. Even if you call this an early honeymoon, I still have a wedding coming up, and I am not about to miss my own wedding, no matter how important the mission is. Matilda smiled and patted her on the head, rubbing the fluffy fox ears. Don't worry. I have set an alarm. 1 week before the wedding, I will pick you both up so that you have time to prepare. Then, you can finish the mission after you are married if it still needs guidance. With the strangeness of that continent, I can't be sure. But I feel like this is going to be a relatively straightforward issue. She explained. And I feel like those words are a massive red flag for things going wrong. Dana countered. You worry too much. Carl has a calendar as well. He can bring you both back on time if you don't trust my schedule. Matilda pouted. Dana smiled at the dejected dragon. It's not that I don't trust your schedule, it's that I don't trust this situation to be anything resembling a vacation, or even an easily solved problem. If the system is being totally suppressed there, it must be for a reason. Do you remember what the undead were up to this year? That was also an attempt to suppress the system and keep it from changing the balance of power. Matilda's frown turned to a smile. See, such a ridiculous notion. Utter chaos. Who would even think that would work? That's why I thought that this would be the perfect trip. In Carl's mind, Kara laughed. The problem wasn't the mission. It was that both ladies had very different views on what a fun and relaxing vacation was. Matilda just thought that Dana would enjoy some chaos more than Dana thought she would. Kara was more interested in whether she would get a good chance to try out the Elemental's Wrath spell. They had been too busy to go on more dungeon runs, and she needed to know how it worked. What did Berserk feel like? Could a badger even go berserk? What kind of transformation would she get? These were all important questions she didn't know the answer to. Carl ignored the train of thought that was sure to lead Kara into trouble, and asked Azov about the important parts. Do you think that it would be too dangerous to leave Thor, Ray, and Remy here? If someone needs powerful custom items, they can ask Lady Sapphire. She's fully trained and capable, Plus her grasp of language is so much better than mine that she's likely to come up with even more interesting items. Carl asked. That should keep all the departments of the Darklight host stocked with what they need. I know that the Blue Dragons are assembling a group to expand the skill library, using your Drod Guild house as a base, but they're unlikely to reach a consensus on who gets to go before the wedding. The last I heard, they had over 10,000 volunteers, not counting the ones who were currently assigned to other projects. Azaf agreed. Carl hadn't considered that. The Blue Dragons wouldn't struggle for volunteers to write new skill books. They would struggle to house everyone who wanted a chance to write new skill books, especially if they were ones that they could use. Though they might end up creating a whole new imbalance with their tests. If they were left up to their own devices, there might not be another royal or monarch-ranked warrior left in Drod by the time that they had all the data they wanted. Ray weighed the options. There were plenty of workers for her cloth now. She could give them a month's supply and come along with Carl. The cloth was the base for upgraded items, but that was mostly up to the runecrafting team. So she could take a month off to adventure. But there were so many people to decorate here, and she already had a small lake of blood waiting for her. Self-care was important. It was a dilemma. I won't stop you if you want to come along. Carl agreed. Can we really trust the Carl to the children and Hawk? Ray asked nobody in particular. Hawk screeched in annoyance, while Remy laughed. Sister Kara will be with us too, Tian added helpfully. Kara laughed at Ray's mental doubt response. At least our little brother still has faith in the power of family. Don't worry, big sister. I will take good care of the Dana Mage. Ray gave a mental sigh. I will let you go without me. I've already got commissions to decorate 3 whole vampire covens and 2 mythic raiding teams. I can't leave that up to a subordinate. But I am warning you now, if the totems come to ask, I am definitely going to the dungeon with them so that my kill count doesn't drop behind. Kara and Hawk nodded in agreement. It wasn't a contest if one of the competitors was throwing the game. Chapter 1167. Road Trip Pre-Honeymoon. As the beasts finished their argument about who should go, Azaf was preparing to finish his drink and head out to meet with more dignitaries. When do we need to leave? Dana asked. Well, you've got everyone you need here with you now, so I will just open a portal from the table. Don't worry. Carl should know where you are when you arrive, Matilda explained. Then they were falling through the air. Hawk laughed as he came out of his space, and even Kara came out to play as Carl transformed into the World Dragon avatar. And Dana used cloud dancing, one of her newer movement skills, to fly. Carl flew under her, and Dana settled between his shoulders as Carl circled to get his bearings and see if there was anything here that might give him some idea where Matilda had put them, or why they had started thousands of meters in the air. They were over the ocean, he realized. Then Carl saw the small port city with the naval fleet guarding the bay. It wasn't a big city, perhaps 15 or 20,000 people, but big enough given the primitive level of society that he could see. The mana here was incredibly dense, but Carl only sensed the most basic of magic from the city, despite seeing multiple species that should be able to use some level of magic innately. I am going to scout, Hawk announced, then activated Lord of Destruction, as the ethereal form increased his speed. After a few minutes of lazy circling, Kara landed on Carl's back, and he decided they had surveyed long enough. Hawk would bring back more reports in a few minutes, and there was a city beneath them where they could ask questions. Land outside the city. Remember what Matilda said about feral dragons? Dana reminded him as Carl headed for shore. Carl nodded and circled down to land a kilometer outside the city limits before transforming back into beast form, his customary cat demon appearance. Dana returned to human just in case there were issues with her being a fox here as well, and Kara returned to her space. She was sure that this reception needed popcorn. Or it was about to. Carl and Dana walked to the gates of the wooden-walled port city, where a pair of guards with spears and terrified faces blocked their way. Only the mightiest of warriors might enter Capture Clan's fortress. The guard insisted. Carl frowned, and then activated his rarely useful, dominating power, and used it to drive every guard at the gate to their knees before him. Dominating power, the Packmaster's aura gains a mental domination, affect at will, requiring weaker minds to submit to his will. Hypnosis-type ability. Now, that's a properly respectful way to greet guests. I had worried that I might encounter someone without manners. He informed them with a feline smile. Rapid hoof steps on stone roads marked the approach of an overlord-ranked wrath demon, holding an axe in each hand. "Who is bullying my guards?" he demanded. "They're just being polite. Don't take it too much to heart." Carl joked. "A puny man like you?" the demon demanded. "Would you like me to be less puny? My size is merely a preference." Carl replied. The demon swung an axe overhand, flashing in the afternoon sun, right into Carl's grasping hand. A flex of his fingers shattered the ascended rank steel, and the demon was left staring at Carl in confusion. "You're not going to be able to injure me that way. Forget cutting my skin, you couldn't trim my fur with that blade. Now, my wife and I have just arrived on the continent, and I wish to know what city we're in, and what cities are nearby."
Carl explained.
The demon frowned. The axe wasn't a mighty weapon, and he could do better with his claws. But this cat demon was impressive. "You are at the port of Capture, home of the Capture clan's trade fleet. The road you landed beside leads east to Bunga. 2 days for soldiers on foot." The wrath demon reluctantly explained. "Oh, wonderful, we're right on course. You'll enjoy this trip, Dana. My first successful duel was for the title of City Lord of Bunga, but that was quite some time ago now. I wonder how my successors have done." Carl laughed. The wrath demon's face lit up with joy when Carl said that. "You were once Lord of Bunga? We should spar. That would be good. I need to see the difference between myself and a big city lord," he insisted. Carl frowned. "I am much more powerful than I was then. Dragons grow over time, and it has been a long time. But if you want to spar, we can. You gave me good news. It's the least I could do for you."
Dana sighed.
Carl was definitely up to something, and getting into a fist fight with a 5-meter-tall wrath demon was not the point of his experiment, especially not one that was still at the overlord rank. The unfortunate demon wouldn't even be able to harm Carl. Carl activated brutality, which made the two of them roughly the same size, though Carl was still more slender in build. Then he changed to a pair of loose pants for easier movement and nodded to the confused demon. "How did you do that?" he asked. "Magic, of course. Don't worry about it for now. Spar first, learn later."
Carl replied.
That was solid logic in the mind of a wrath demon, and the town lord dropped his axe to charge at Carl barehanded. He threw a brutal punch which Carl casually caught, and then used as leverage to toss the demon away and flip him on his back. The city lord flared his wings and landed on his feet, then charged again, using short, fast jabs now that he knew he couldn't overpower Carl with raw strength. Carl let him go for a few minutes, remaining on the defense. Then, he counterattacked, landing a single hard blow in the middle of the demon's chest that shattered bone and sent him skidding across the sandy ground. The wrath demon spit blood as he got back to his feet. "No wonder you became a city lord. You have power in your fists," the wrath demon commended.
Carl smiled.
"Thank you. Let me heal that injury, and we can talk about what I truly came here for." Chapter 1168. Port Capture. Carl used Healing Splash to heal the demon and wash the sand off him at the same time. "They're all better. It saves us the time of waiting for you to regenerate. Now, I've got a question for you that will certainly seem odd if you're not a fan of history. What do you know of the system?" Carl asked. The big demon frowned as he ran his hand over his freshly healed chest. "The system? The legend of the ancient divine power that would let anyone who gained its favor ascend beyond their species' limits? It is said that even your foxkin bride could ascend to immortality if she had access to the system. Well, she would have a chance. The gods are not so simple to please, and there would surely have been trials and tribulations to gain that much power, even with the system." Carl nodded. "Well, at least it isn't completely forgotten. But the system has started to awaken again on the other continents, and we came here to determine why it won't awaken here." The demon frowned. "Perhaps we have the favor of the demon gods? They know that prey is prey and scum are scum that belong beneath the powerful. What self-respecting demon god would encourage a way for succubi and satyrs to get notions of rising above their station?
Karl nodded.
That is a possibility. But we have heard that the elves and the other species are having the same issue, and the other continents don't want to risk the chance that it's a curse of some sort that might spread. The demon nodded in understanding. We don't do any trade with the other continents, but some of the other clans have bigger and better boats, so they do. If they spread a curse that weakened their trade partners, it could mean a disaster for everyone. Is there anything that we can do to help you with your research? Is there a reward for proving that it's not contagious? Karl chuckled at the last part. Yes, there is indeed a reward for the one who can gain access to the system and prove that it's not a contagious disease. It may not be easy, but if there is an inn where we can spend the night, I will run a few tests tomorrow morning to see if anyone has the gift. The Wrath Demon nodded. Of course, this is a port town, we've got not just one, but two inns here. Not all clans welcome visitors, but we do. It's good for business. Karl saw that the residents were trying to size him up as he entered, unable to effectively guess his power level, as most of them were only ascended and commander rank. He briefly considered letting his aura loose, but that would just be cruel to the people, even if the city lord or clan leader, whatever title the Wrath Demon preferred, wasn't trying to hide his own. Here is the inn. Just ask the innkeeper, and they'll have one of the servants get you anything that you need. The innkeeper, a magic demon whose feathers were the same blues and whites as the ocean near the shore, nodded eagerly. Yes, Lord Capture. I will take good care of your guests. Is there anything that you need right away? He asked. A room with a desk for writing, preferably enough room for us both to work. Then you can have someone bring up food and drink in an hour. You're from the magic demon lineage and fairly well respected in town, it seems. So, we may call on you to assist with our research later. Karl replied. The innkeeper was confused but nodded. The best way to deal with powerful people was to nod, agree, and hope that they didn't get bored and kill you anyhow. But these strangers were very flashy and clean, not even trying to hide their wealth and privilege. Could they be so powerful that they didn't need to? Even the dragons dulled their scales when they walked on another clan's territory. Karl hadn't thought about the state of the local villages when he had arrived. He was still shirtless after the fight, and Dana had changed to simple layered martial artist's robes, ones that were easy to fight in if she needed to. She had also transformed back into fox form once she realized that her human form was seen as a lesser species by the locals. But compared to the locals, they were still incredibly overdressed. Karl sent out a thought toward the beasts and found that the thoughts of Ray, Thor and Remy were so faint that he had trouble hearing them. But the link didn't feel any weaker, just muffled by distance. He could still tell exactly where they were if he wanted to open a portal at their location. Next was the function test. Tessa, can you receive messages from us while we are on this continent? He asked. The message is distorted. Letters keep flickering like it's trying to decrypt them. Tessa replied, and Karl immediately saw what she meant. The message was readable, but random letters kept changing. I will continue to send messages when we can. Thor can fill you in on the details, if he hasn't already. Karl couldn't see Thor keeping secrets from Tessa, or from anyone, really. If they asked, he would get too excited about the chance to be helpful and just tell them. We should write a few skill books and see if the locals can use them. That's the most surefire way to awaken the system, but if it's being suppressed here, there is no telling what might happen. Karl explained. So, first we find out if it is possible for people from the continent to awaken the system, and then we work on finding out what is causing the delay. All in the next month. Dana confirmed. In the next 2 weeks, preferably, because I am looking forward to just taking you to bed for a week and not leaving. Then, Matilda is going to pick us up a few days before the wedding, so that we can get ready. Karl agreed. Chapter 1169. Book Choice. Dana smirked at Karl as she took out supplies to write a skill book. What spells should we even start with? She asked, pen poised. Well, as the town we've seen so far was mostly demons, with only a few others, the obvious choices would be Fireball or Magic Missiles. Those are the ones that they're most likely to be compatible enough with to use the skill book.
Karl joked.
Most demons could use basic fire magic on their own, or arcane magic in the case of the feathered descendants of the magic demon clan. But those sorts of controlled abilities normally came with system access or years of study, so if they found some young demons to test, they should be fine. I will write Rend because I don't know Cleave, and there are no more essential warrior skills than those two. If they can't learn magic, they are probably warriors anyhow. Karl added. They sat quietly across the table in the small hotel room, writing books for the next hour, until a knock at the door disturbed their flow. An awakened rank satyr in a frayed and repeatedly patched robe that appeared to have been made from a flour sack bowed as he brought in trays of food, and then a pitcher of wine from a cart in the hall. Your refreshments, honored guests. He greeted them. Thank you. Before you go, I have a few questions for you. Karl replied, trying not to scare off the skittish satyr. The servant bowed. Anything you wish, demon lord. Dana giggled, then snorted as she tried not to giggle. The power level of this place, what level are most of the species at, and how are they ranked? We came from overseas, and I know nothing of the region. Karl elaborated. Of course, my lord. Naturally, at the bottom are the common ranked cattle and slaves. Then awakened rank indentured servants like myself, serving our masters until we buy our freedom or ascend. The ascended and commanders are considered commoners here, unless they're commanding a ship. Though I am told that further inland the commanders are more like knights. The inland tribes have a different way of doing things. I do hope that you prepared proper clothing if you're going to visit them. They don't wear anything that wasn't living, and I don't have any idea what sort of magic you made those clothes with. The last was spoken softly, and Dana laughed. They're made with bloodbath spider silk, she explained. The satyr looked horrified. What sort of monster could capture a bloodbath spider and force it to make them clothing? Even the big boss might not win a fight against one, much less force it to work for him. The satyr bowed as he retreated, and Dana didn't try to stop him. They had already terrified the unfortunate man, and if he was an indentured servant of the inn, he wouldn't know much, and he wouldn't benefit much from gaining a class. At least, not any time soon, as satyrs had such a hard time ascending, even in the Dragon Isles. Hey, I found our house, Hawk announced. We're not even from this continent. Karl reminded him. Are you sure? I just flew over the place called Bunga, and the notice says that the house beneath me belongs to the Darklight host. That's definitely us. Karl couldn't argue with that. If it belonged to the Darklight host, it was their house, no matter how you looked at it. The system isn't completely inactive here. Hawk just got a notice that he flew over a Darklight host guild house. Karl informed Dana. How many people live there? The city is big, but the house is abandoned. It's still intact, but it's all old and there is a barrier over it. Hawk informed him. Karl relayed the message, then began to formulate a plan. First, we find a test subject or two here, then we can move on to Bunga. If there is an unused guild house there, we have somewhere free to stay, and there might be answers about what happened to the continent. He suggested. All right, but who do we even pick? Dana asked. Karl chuckled. I say we pick the biggest goon we can find, either an orc or a wrath demon, and see if they can become a warrior. Then look for a mage of some sort or a magic demon, and see if you can awaken a class for them. Should we do that tonight or in the morning? Dana asked, then gave Karl a suggestive wiggle of her eyebrows. Now, I don't want any distractions tonight, and we're going to need all night for what I have planned. Dana laughed, and took Karl's hand to lead him down to the tavern of the inn. Miss, the satyr who had brought them their meal whispered as they walked past him in the hall. Yes, I would suggest that you change back to fox form. You do have one, right? You smell like fox and magic, so you should be a shapeshifter. If people think you're human, they might misunderstand you as a slave in hiding, and try to capture you for reward. It's better not to let anyone who has poor senses think that you might be common rank. The goat-legged demon whispered. Thank you. Where I'm from, it's the fox form that gets too much attention.
Dana replied.
The satyr shrugged. But that's better attention than the slavers. Satyrs don't dare go outside when they're in town, even if we have our certificates. It's better to pay a delivery fee than to go missing onto one of the slave boats. Dana transformed back and Carl cast Eternal Lightning Barrier over both of them. The satyr nodded happily. That's much better. Nobody will mistake you for anything but a different fox species now, and they're all powerful. Carl patted the young man on the shoulder and pressed a silver coin into his hand. Thank you for the information. If you have more helpful information for us later, feel free to pass it along. He quietly informed the little demon so that anyone nearby didn't notice and try to take the satyr's money. Chapter 1170. Backlash. Downstairs, the innkeeper greeted them with a warm smile. Demon Lord, young miss, it is good to see you again. Would you like drinks? Perhaps an evening meal?
Carl nodded.
The servants just brought up a meal, but both, I think. Something light to eat. Anyhow. Then we need you to find us a young, as in still growing, but not before puberty, wrath demon or orc. One with ambition and skills. And then we will need to borrow you as well. Just for a few minutes. It will help us with our work here. Dana added. The innkeeper was from a magic demon species, so he should be suitable for most mage-type classes. I know just the one for your task. Let me send a runner. The demon motioned for the server to bring them drinks, and then joined Dana and Carl at the table. What can I help you with? Questions about the continent. Dana nodded. Those as well. But first, I want to know what happens when you read this book. She handed him the book of Magic Missile Volley, an improved version of Magic Missile she had gained with her new class. It was no harder to write, and logically it should be better for awakening a class, as it wasn't a basic spell that classically trained mages might know. The demon opened the book, and then a pulse of black mist emerged from his body, and it was knocked out of his hands. Kara leapt out of her space and onto the table to examine the strange phenomenon. She hadn't even detected the magic on him before he tried to use the book. That was new. And new was interesting. Tell him to do it again. Nullify isn't finding anything. Kara demanded. Are you all right? If you are, we would like for you to try again. Carl requested. The demon was breathing heavily, but he nodded. Just a moment. That was unexpectedly painful. Carl focused on Remy's skills and created a healing totem on the table. The magical item would cleanse, purify, and heal. Perfect for unknown negative effects from an unidentified spell. The innkeeper took a slow sip of wine, and then placed the cup well away from himself as he reached for the book again. This time, when the black mist pulsed, Kara hit it with Nullify at the mythic rank, and a ringing noise, like a hammer hitting a gong, echoed through the room, along with a flash of blackness that darkened the entire room, even to Carl's senses. But Kara wasn't giving up on nullifying the effect, and the darkness quickly faded. She nodded and tapped the book, which the demon picked up and carefully opened. It vanished in his hands, and the innkeeper's eyes went vacant for a moment. When they opened, they glowed blue with power, and his feathers seemed to crackle with magic. Carl smiled in victory, then inspected the man with the system interface. Name, Tantala. Rank, Commander. Class, Spellweaver. Then the letters seemed to jumble, before fading from sight along with the demon's newly gained nameplate. So, it's not impossible, it's being forcibly suppressed.
Dana muttered.
And the spell isn't on him. It's just here everywhere. See if he can use his skills.
Kara requested.
Can you use your new spell? Carl asked. The innkeeper nodded, then leaned forward to whisper his answer. Like you said, the legendary system is real. I saw it. I can even access class skills, but I don't have any of the points I need to buy more, he whispered. Oh, very good. So, you can still use it. Carl replied quietly. The demon nodded. I can also see your names. All three of you. Yours has a strange thing around it, probably to let me know that you're a demon lord. But I can definitely see them. That meant it was suppressing both Carl and Dana's system functions, so that they couldn't see the system status of the residents. But if it wasn't stopping the innkeeper from using his class abilities, there might be much more at play here, and many more system users than they thought. The problem was that nobody could tell who they were unless they spread the news themselves, and that would make it look like there were none on the continent. Carl reported that directly to Matilda, but got no response, so he had to hope that the message had gone through after the troubles they had earlier. The inn's errand boy brought a hulking young orc, perhaps 15 years old, into the inn a few minutes later. "You needed to see me, innkeeper? Is there work today?" he asked.
Karl smilet.
"In a way. I need you to test something for me, and I will pay you to try. See, good pay." He held up a silver coin, and then handed another to the innkeeper, who blinked in shock, then pocketed the money. A silver coin as a tip was probably a day's wage or more, even in foreign currency. But Carl didn't have any less valuable coins. "No problem, sir. I can lift all sorts of heavy things. Or if someone has been troubling you, I can take care of them right quick." The orc agreed quickly. "I need you to open this and tell me what you understand of the contents." The orc looked like he was about to say something, then reconsidered and sat down at the table. He took a pair of reading glasses out of his pocket, and then flipped open the book. Kara flexed her claws, preparing for the backlash, but nothing came. The book vanished, the boy's eyes went blank for a second, and then he got a nameplate that didn't vanish immediately. Name Boy. Rank Commander. Class Warrior. "Your father named you Boy?" Carl asked. The orc nodded. "When I reach 2 meters tall, I can pick a new name for myself. Until then, I'm still a boy." That actually sounded like a very Orcish thing to do. "Oh, I can use even more new skills. What are bonus points?" "Well, I'll figure that out later. Guard, shield slam, and cleave. Those sound like an excellent set of warrior skills," he declared. Dana gave Carl a disbelieving look. With all the options that he might have had, he picked the 3 most stereotypical warrior skills to go with Rend. Carl handed him a single silver coin and the orc pulled him into a hug. "This is the best day ever. Did you need more answers? If not, I'm going to train with the town guard. They're never going to believe how much stronger I just got. Go have fun. Just try not to hurt anyone with your new skills unless they deserve it." Carl agreed. Warriors really were born to the role.